Hello, welcome to art today. We are going to work on a pear today. So I've got one here to look at, and we'll kind of be loosely basing our painting on that. We're working with an 8-color praying set, and the first thing I'm going to do is just tape my paper down. So I'm using washi tape, working on watercolor paper, and I am just taping about half of the surface where I'll be working. I just want to have a nice little white border when I'm done. So I'm kind of half on the paper, half on my desk. And this is washi tape, so I know that it will release really simply. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I got my water ready. And I'm just using a regular 8-color palette here. This is a praying set. And I'm going to use this part to mix in. If you have the one that's just 8 colors, you can mix in the lid. I often do that. But today I'm going to mix new colors so I can show you. All right, so first we're just going to draw our pear shape on here. And a pear is kind of just a lumpy top. So it's kind of like a rainbow shape, and then we just go down into a nice round bottom. And I don't know about you, but I like a pear with a big stem on it, so I'm going to make a little stem on mine, and then I'm going to make a big pretty leaf because I always enjoy painting a leaf. And I'm going to make my leaf very fat, and then maybe we'll have like a stem in the middle. But that's about all I need to do for drawing. And I'm going to erase that line, and then I'm ready to get started painting. So the number one thing I want to make sure I do is leave a little bit of shine on my pear. I'm going to start with yellow, so let's just put some yellow right here in the palette. I'm just going to get some of this yellow paint, mix it up, and I know that I need kind of a great deal of paint to cover this pear. And it's just going to be a super duper light wash. So a very light wash of yellow paint is what I'm after here. Light, light, light. So I'm going to paint like almost my whole pear. I'm going to start at these edges. And I'm just going to paint my whole pear except for the stem. I'm going to go around it a little bit. And I'm going to paint the edges. And I'm just fanning this brush out to get a nice wide area. And what I want to do is kind of leave like a little hole here, because I want to show the light on my pear. And I'm going to maybe leave one here also. But we can cover them up later if we don't like them. So then yellow, very light yellow, and the rest of this pear. It's super light, it's super loose. So what we know, because our light is over here, is that this side of our pear is going to be a little darker. So I'm going to start and get a little green over here, because I want my pear to be, maybe to have some green on it and maybe also some red. So I'm going to take some green. I think I'm probably done with my yellow. So I'm going to mix green into this yellow. And you can see it's like the tiniest bit of green coming in. And I'm just going to go down the middle of this pear. And I'm adding green where I want to add it. I'm kind of just dotting it in. Maybe around this edge also I'll add, oops, I got the wrong green. Let me get some of the other green back. So by starting with that very light yellow color, we have allowed our pear to be a very yellowy green pear. And over here on the edge, I'm going to add a little more green, because I want a great deal of green here. And our pear doesn't have to have a real even tone to its skin. As a matter of fact, it might have a very uneven tone, and that is a-okay. And I'm not going straight from the pan to the paper at all here. And the reason why is because I want to keep my colors at this stage very nice and very light. So I'm just gonna come dot this yellow in here. The key here is just to really layer things. And when we put paint that is wet into already wet paint, we get some super interesting pattern, and it can be really, really beautiful. And I've decided I don't like this hole down here, so I'm just filling it right in. It's still lighter. And another way we can make light is to dry our brush out and pull some of the paint off, like that. And that's a more subtle way. We can also kind of round out our little luminous edge of that reflection there to where it blends in. So just let your paint do what it's doing. And we don't want to rush too much at this point. Maybe I'm gonna get the tiniest bit of brown, just a tiny brown, and grab some of this green and make a little bit of this browny green. And I'm gonna add that here, because over here is where the pear is gonna be a little bit darker. It's shaded here. The light is coming from this edge. So I'm gonna add a little tiny bit of brown just while this is drying to that edge, and maybe also to this edge. And I'm just trying to stay right inside of that pencil line. So I'm getting this this brownish yellowish, was kind of the color of a bruise, right? So it's not the most like incredibly gorgeous color, but it's gonna help us show a little bit of shading. So that's what I'm doing with it over here. Then if you want, you can bring a little bit of it into the neck of this pear here and kind of through. And that'll help us show the roundness of this pear. And if we don't like it, we don't have to keep it there. So I'm gonna come back in with just my regular watered down yellow now. And I'm gonna kind of place it through the center here. And I'm just making little dots. If this doesn't make a lot of sense to you, it's okay. I'm just kind of making the idea of what we're doing is we're gonna make this pear's surface look kind of irregular, because pears aren't real perfect. They have a lot of interesting mottled color and lumpy shape to them. So it makes them just really a joy to work with. So I'm gonna get a little bit of this Kelly green here and just keep it watered down and put a little bitty bit of that into some of these darker edges where I want to have some brighter green. So these pears can be a really nice, meditative, fun way to just watch your paint play. And the way the paint will blend as it dries is going to be really interesting. And it's going to give us some pattern through here that we maybe didn't plan on, but we like a lot, right? And we can remember that through that neck, we're also kind of coming to this point to showcase the fabulous curves of this pear. Now you might see occasionally like some pink on a pear. So I'm gonna get some red. Just gonna wet my red. I'm gonna get a little bit of red over here, but I really don't want it to be super red. So I'm gonna draw out my brush. And I'm gonna maybe add this red and brown together, because then I get a color that's more like what we might see on a pear. And I think I'm just gonna add it in kind of right here. So I'm just dotting adding it in. And I'm not blending. I'm not going for a blend. I'm going for just to have this color melt right in. So we're not blending, we're not purposefully blending at all. I just want this color to melt across this pear. And I want the other colors to do that also. I'm gonna go back to my yellow and come into where we have yellow and green. And just add a little more of it. We're just sort of going to keep layering. We're going to keep this spot because I want that to be our light reflection. So let's leave our pear for just a moment and we'll go over to this leaf and we'll do our leaf. So the leaf is going to be a lot greener. So I'm using a lot of green. And I'm probably going to add a little bit of brown to that green. That's more like what we'd see on a pear leaf. Now, if you want to do this in a different color palette, that's fine. You can do that. So I'm going to fill in the whole leaf first with this green color. And this is kind of, I've sort of just made an olive green. You see? And even though we only have 8 colors, it was pretty easy to make this olive green because we just had to add a little bit of brown to our normal green. But it's the right color. I'm liking it. So the little tip of this leaf is always the hard part, and I like to pull from the opposite direction, and that tends to make it a little easier to get through. There we go. So this pear leaf, like the pear itself, is kind of big and fat, and we like it. Soaking up a lot of sun to feed those nice big fat pears. So if you'd like, you can put a little bit of that pear green in your leaf throughout just to make it a little bit irregular. You can put a little brown, but I do think you probably should water it down first because it's going to be very dark if you don't. Watercolors can last you a super long time because you just don't actually always need to use a lot of paint. And if you do something like I just did, that's too much brown. Dry your brush out and just roll it over and it'll pick that up. It'll just vacuum it right up for you if you're not happy with what you've done. I might add just a little straight bit of green to it and see what happens. You can always just play around and see what you like. Now it's too green, so I'm going to go back to my olive and bring some more of that olive in. And what makes it kind of interesting is if you just keep the different colors in different sections of the leaves, and they can touch and they can blend, but not like a really purposeful blend. What else? What other colors do I want in that leaf? Maybe a tiny of yellow, maybe a little yellow. Oh yeah, I like how that's working. So I'm just gonna dip, kind of touch the tip of my brush to get it a little more spread out. And then I've got a lot of paint there, so I'm just gonna suck a little bit of that back up. Now you don't have to do that. That's absolutely, you can let it dry the way it is, and you'll just have, it'll look a little different than mine, which is perfectly okay. Oh, you know what I forgot? It's this little tiny leaf stem. So I'm just gonna do that in the same color as the leaf. I wanna connect it to the stem of the pear, which is gonna be probably one of the later things that I paint because I don't want that paint to run into the part that I've painted. All right, so now we can get in here and we can start adding a little more color all around our pear. So we're just building layers here. And that's what's gonna give us nice depth of color. And remember, pears have like kind of little dots and speckles. So the more of that texture you're able to give it, the better. I've lost all the red out of my reddish brown, so I'm just gonna pull a tiny bit more in there. But I want to keep it very watery and very loose. Kind of an awkward situation over here where I can see the green at the edge of the red part of my pear, so I'm just going to blend that in a little bit. And this kind of turns brown as I get it in the green, and that is a-okay. So I'm going to go back into my yellow green, kind of mix a little over here. Look how nice that is. It's that very mottled, really weird little pear color that we're going for. So I'm sort of just doing this little ombre action over here where I'm not officially blending it, but I'm putting some color down. And then here I'm just going to add some water because I would like that to loosen up a little bit. So I can do that by adding water. What else do we need? I'm going to add a little more of the olive green, but I'm brightening it up with regular green a tiny bit. But I'm going to add some more of that olive green to this edge of my pear over here that's kind of in the darker area. And then I'm just going to bring some of those dots into the center. So just keep a very light touch with your brush and try not to do too much conscious blending. Just let these little dots go down. Let them behave however they're going to behave. You don't have to keep your brush super full of paint either. You can just keep a tiny bit of paint in that brush. And remember, we want the top to look sort of rounded, so we can build in that contour with dark on the edge. And then what should we do? Let's go back in with some yellow. So remember, this is very watered down. All right, and so yellow is just going to be my color through the middle here. And I want this to be like the splotchiest pear you have ever seen. So I am just splotching with the tip of this brush. And all of these colors can kind of be in each other's area. But by placing them sort of sporadically and kind of far apart, we're making it be okay. I'm loving the way this is looking right now. I think I just need a little bit more of the dark. Let's see, maybe I've added too much paint. So I'm going to roll right through the center here and take some of it away. There we go. I feel better about that. Grab another piece of paper, something to fan it with, and kind of just dry for a little bit. We don't need to dry it super dry, we just need to make it not super watery the way it is. And the way my look here at the edge, the way my paint is drying, that's really interesting. It's because of the way my paper has warped, and I really like it. So that's super interesting. All right. I want to paint this stem, but it's still very wet around the stem, so we're just gonna not do that yet. But let's go back into this leaf and we can add some detailing. So I'm just gonna get, you know, kind of these same colors that I used before to paint the leaf in my brush, and I'm just gonna pull tiny details. So that was not much at all, but it gave our leaf some definition. And I'll do some upward lines and some upward lines this way. So again, that's just not a lot of detail, but it adds something for us. I'm just getting really impatient. I want this stem area to dry, so I'm just gonna dab and get some of that paint off around there so that we can paint our stem. And I think that worked just fine. All right. So this stem is gonna be nice and brown, right? We know a stem is brown. So I'm gonna bring a little brown over here and I'm gonna water it down. If you need to take your tray over to your water, do it. Don't risk like running water accidentally over your painting, because that can just really mess things up. You don't want to do that. Okay, so I've got a little bit of brown here, and I'm going to go ahead and start painting my stem. So first I'm just going to paint it light brown, which I know this looks very boring, but we'll come back. We'll come back to it and we'll make it beautiful. We're going to give this stem its moment, but we're going to kind of let this brown paint get a little dried first. And then we'll come back and do some other things to it. All right, so now it's the time to just do some fanning. Think about our lovely pear. It's so cute. I eat a pear for breakfast every single morning. And I have this like really funny, I always go to the grocery store and I get like 7 or 8 pears just so that I'll have enough, and I set them all on my windowsill to sit in the sun and get ripe, and they're so cute. I love them dearly. They always look like this little gang of people looking out the window, and then one of them falls over and looks sleepy. I just enjoy them thoroughly. So the way my paint is drying here is kind of weird, and that's gonna work very, very well for what's going on with this pear. Because like I said, we want that skin to be kind of weird and kind of dappled and irregular. If we bring back and look at the actual pear, it's got spots and scratches all over it. So we can have it look kind of irregular. And we're fine with that. So I want to get this nice and dry. So now let's go in, and we're just going to use exactly the same color that we used on the stem the first time. We don't want a lot of paint in that brush. And we're just going to come on down and put a little bit more on this side. Maybe even more. That's not quite enough. Maybe we want more. But I want my stem to be just as irregular as the pear. Nothing on this pear is perfect. Maybe let's get a little black. And black we have to use very sparingly. So this is not a lot of black at all. And it's very watered down. So let's do like a touch here and there. I'm gonna vacuum some of that off because that stem is a super tiny area. So I might have gone in there with too much paint. All right, there we go. Now we're getting, you can see that it's a very delicate use of the paint. So I'm gonna rinse my brush, dry it out, and kind of go back and just scratch that down to where we are working with very little paint on the page. That's what we want. So now it kind of looks like we have a brown side and a black side on our stem. So that's great. That's what we want. I'm going to put a little more brown here at the bottom, just because I can. There we go. So now our stem has some dimension to it. And I tell you what, let's mix a little black with some of this olive green. Just a tiny bit. I'm going to mix all these greens together because I think I'm mostly done with them. All right. So I want it very watery. So I'm going to go and add just a tiny bit more dimension to that leaf. But I just want it to be so light. that may not be in real life what a pear leaf actually looks like, but I just like that I'm adding some texture to it. All right, so now comes, this is kind of a fun part, and it's quite a good time. So I'm gonna speckle this pear. But what I don't wanna do is get speckles all over the rest of my surface. So I'm gonna kind of cover up the rest of the surface like this. You see? And then when we speckle, it'll only get on the pear. So I'm just tearing up paper towel, and I can keep these around and use them later for paint. And you can decide, do I want speckles on my leaf? I think I do. I don't know that you need speckles on your leaf, but I enjoy speckling everything. If you have worked with me before, you'll know how much I like speckles. I don't need my stem speckled, so I'm just gonna cover that up. And I don't want my shiny spot to be speckled because I want that to just be a little reflecty spot. So I'm gonna cover it up with my paper towel. And let's see. Yeah, it's gonna be a pain to speckle this leaf, so I'm just covering it all up. There we go. All right, so now I've kind of masked off to where I only have my pear. And I am going to I'm gonna use a pencil and I'm gonna kind of tap. So I'm gonna speckle in yellow first. And it's a very watery, very loose yellow. So I'm just gonna tap. And I'm gonna give it some speckles. I'm gonna water it down again. And speckle again. So that's fun. And then I'm gonna water this brown. And I want like super light brown. Super watery brown. So I'm gonna hold it a little higher because I want like smaller speckles. And then I'll go in closer. So this is really giving us some awesome texture on this pear. All right, love it. I'm gonna get a little more brown, and I'm gonna add, maybe I'm gonna mix it with black, because we're gonna get a darker brown. And then speckle, oh, there we go, speckle with that. And it's not always really possible to control the direction of your speckles. So that's cool if you can't control the direction of your speckles. All right, now, are there any speckles that are too dark or in the wrong place? Let's go roll them off. If you have a speckle where you don't want it, you can kind of erase it a little bit. How do you know if a speckle is where you don't want it? Well, you don't always know that. Just kind of do some experimenting. See what you think looks good. So now I'm going to remove these, and you can see I got a couple speckles on my background. Ah, I got some speckles on the bottom of my background too. I'm going to wipe them off. My plan is eventually to go back in and here's how we erase. So you just put some water on there and lighten it up a little bit. Just get it nice and light. And then go back in with a clean paper towel and dab off that water. And it's there a little bit, but it's not too bad. Okay, and I'm gonna lift this off with my paintbrush. So we still have our little light spot, so that's what we want. So you can choose to color in your background if you want to, or you can go ahead and be done right now. I am just drying this a little bit. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I may be done, I may not be done. And if you want, you can speckle it some more. You can decide if you're done or not. I think I'm gonna do just a very light wash of a blue background. So I'm taking my blue Putting it over here in the pan. And I'm going to do what I like to call a scratchy background. So this isn't usually what you see me do. Usually I would really saturate the background, like when we do an ocean or something, but I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to make it super scratchy, super loose, and kind of like this. So it's getting drier as I get closer to that pear. And I'm not going to fill that in. I'm just going to keep it kind of dry. So I'm just painting with the edge of my brush until it gets sort of dry. But I'm not touching that pear. I'm staying far away from it. Just kind of, it's very light, it's very loose. It's kind of scratchy. Scratchy, scratchy, scratchy. Trying not to touch that leaf. It's kind of like the game of Operation where you're trying not to touch the sides. But just try and make these like some very loose strokes. Scratchy, multi-directional, good times. These don't have to in any way be perfect. The more multi-directional they are, the more kind of movement it gives the background of your art piece. Sometimes it might be easier for your hand to move in a certain direction. It's easier for my hand to move in this motion kind of from right to left. It's harder to move left to right. So I feel like my strokes look a lot nicer. They're moving from that direction. And then this area over here, I got kind of, this dries really quickly if you're doing it the right way. So you can go in and add some layers, add a little more. And I'm just kind of trying to not touch this pear. I like the way this is turning out quite a bit. As it gets drier, I can get a little closer to that pear. I'm just trying my best not to smudge those edges. I'm running out of paint too, so I'm gonna have to light it and mix a little more. And you can of course do this with different colors if you want to, but I'm choosing to just stick with this blue. So when you keep not much paint in your brush and you just use the tip of that brush, you can get this sort of scribbly painty look. I like it. It layers. It's a lot of fun. All right, so there is our happy little pear. I'm loving it, and I am ready to pull this tape off. So it doesn't matter that it's not totally dry. We can still pull the tape. So I did all right there. I didn't have any tape come up, so that's always nice. I'm gonna pull it here. I'm gonna pull this one. Oh, it looks so great. I love it. Okay. And then I'm pulling this one. And that tape was a little wonky, but I am still overall very happy with it. And of course, the last thing we always do is sign. So I've painted on a greeting card, so now I can send somebody this cute like little pear greeting card. Well, when it's dry, I'll fold it. I don't want to mess it up. All right, so there we are. There we have it. There's our beautiful finished pear. Good job, everybody.